Hey everyone, it is Jeff Horowitz here with you from Dentists in the Know. And I'm happy today because it is Wednesday. And when it's Wednesday, that means it's Hump Day. And that means it's time for Humpday Happy Hour with Dentists in the Know. This is your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. It's live and it's over. Once again, I'm still nursing that tummy a little bit. So laying off on the adult beverages a little bit, but doesn't stop me from sipping something, having some great conversation with all of you and with some of my besties in the dental industry, Dr. Chad Duplantis and Dr. Jennifer Bell. The three of us come to you every single week and pretty much daily because we think you deserve to be in the know. And that's where it comes from, Dentists in the Know. We are all educators, we are all business owners, and we are all in private practice. So guess what? Our job is to bring all of you in the know the best we can. So my friends, how are you tonight?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Lost a medical biller kind of unexpectedly yesterday, and that's not good when you only have one.
Was that it was an employee of yours?
Yes. Yeah, not an yeah, that's the nice thing about outsourcing is, if someone quits them,
Right.
doesn't really make that much of a difference. They've got someone else.
Right.
When your only medical biller
Quits you?
yeah. I can't quit you. Oh,
Yeah,
yes, you can.
she did.
I think
So
it's just
sorry.
that, Jeff, are you that shitty of a boss?
Yeah, and it's funny. I probably had
I'm teasing, buddy. I'm
in the
sorry. That's
last
horrible.
10 years, like turnover of 2 in 10 years. And then the last year by itself, like turnover of 3. So it just happens like that sometimes, I guess. Things go in cycles, but no, I'm a pretty damn good guy. And gosh
I
darn
know
it,
you
people like
are.
me.
That's right.
Gosh
That's
darn it,
exactly
people
right.
like me. All right, are you Stuart Smalley now?
I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like me.
People like me. Yeah, that's good stuff right there, man.
How are y'all doing?
Oh, about the same. So, no, actually, it's
What
a
a
good
little
week.
Susie ray of sunshine you are over there.
I know. It's a good week. How about you,
Alka-Seltzer.
JB? How's your week?
It's great. It's really good.
Yeah.
Just
I heard
operating
you're sharing
very
some of my
lean.
woes, huh?
Yeah, we're just operating super lean, just
Lean and mean.
lean and mean. It's good. No, all is well. We have much to be grateful for. But hey, can we talk about the post today? Because what I would really love to know, let's get off of our, melodramatic situations. Because unfortunately, I don't think any of us are unique in our own crap that we're
Yeah.
currently dealing with in private practice. But a post came in today that talked about a denial that he had received from insurance. And I thought, wow, this is really great timing because I had just received a letter earlier this week denying 2 crowns, and the justification for denial of payment of any reimbursement, either to me or the patient, was for poor prognosis.
Yeah. Well,
Hope-
wasn't that the problem in the first place?
Right. Like, hopefully my prognosis improved, like my intervention improved the prognosis of the thing. And if the prognosis were great, we wouldn't be doing the thing in the first place, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's the first time, like I've seen the whole, you've got to submit the photos to justify the treatment, going through the whole hoops of justifying why you're intervening. And we've dealt with that. And we do all the documentation. But for the first time, it's now coming with a caveat of an expectation of success. And I don't, it's incredibly unquantifiable. Like, how do you determine what is prognosis for an insurance company? If you base it on their frequency limitations, it's 5 years, 7 years. Like, if I just get this crown to last 5 years based on their frequency, was that a good prognosis? I would actually deem it poorly. Like if my crown failed in 5 years, in most situations, I would be pretty bummed about it. I don't know. What do you guys think? And then I would love to hear any interesting denial stories that you've ever received.
I would hope that when they look at prognosis, and I know this is not the case, it should be if that one procedure has a significantly improved prognosis over another procedure in a given set of circumstances. So for those who didn't see the post today, and I'm sorry, I had such a long answer to that I'm like, I'm going to do this later when I can actually sit and really type this out, because I actually, for the person that put that submitted that, which I thought was a great topic, I actually have 2 articles that I've used before in similar denials. And I find sometimes the only way to get a reversal on those kinds of things is with documentation of literature that you can stand behind and say, this is what's taught, at the Coy Center. This is the literature that's widely accepted by the American Academy of Restorative Dentistry. And in their review, do you seem to know better than these organizations who have not only read this literature, but who have also vetted this literature in the context of everything else that's out there, and then made suggestions to the practicing, population. So to me, that's, you can argue back and forth all day, but until you have something in writing that substantiates your perspectives. But for that particular situation where there was cuspal involvement, there's no question that cuspal coverage is indicated there, and an indirect procedure will have a significantly better prognosis. And there's studies to prove that. So,
but wouldn't you think we would at least go back to the olden days where they would just downgrade it to the thing they want you to do because it's cheaper? Like in the olden days, if you did a crown and they didn't want you to do a crown, they would downgrade it to an onlay or a filling and say, well, we'll pay you benefit on the filling because we think that would have been minimally invasive dentistry. You chose to do something more Cadillac, so you don't get Cadillac coverage. At least that would have been acknowledgement that treatment was indicated. Like the poor prognosis response was basically to say, take it out and do something different, which, by the way, is 3 times more expensive than the single crown that I provided for the patient, which, by the way, is serving him quite nicely. But, I don't know. I'm a bit befuddled.
There's so many directions that I could go on this, but the first place that I want to start is that my kids are both improv kids, and they used to do this skit, and it used to be called Back in My Day. And it would start off and everybody would come up with something different. But when you said the olden days, it just made me think of that.
Yeah.
Back in my day.
Back in my day.
But, I had, believe it or not, I am actually, even though we are fee for service, I am very good at arguing with insurance companies, and I will always get my way. It's very, very seldom that I won't.
Oh, wow.
And, one of the things that I always try to do is talk with, no, I'm serious, man. I will fight.
I'm like you. I don't give up.
I love the letters. I have the pissed off letter. I have the nice letter. I have, the research.
Charlie, get me the nice letter.
I start with the nice one and then it starts getting nasty. But my favorite is when you actually, and it's rare, but when you get one of the claims adjusters to call you. And I'll never forget this conversation. It was several years ago. I wish I had the insurance company name and I wish I had the adjuster's name, because he was the coolest guy I've ever talked to. He was like, he goes, look, dude, I do this part-time as kind of bonus income. I'm about to retire. And he goes, cracked tooth. Did you use a tooth sleuth? He goes, I'm just going to tell you, insurance companies love those 2 words, tooth sleuth. And he goes, he started giving me all these things that they look for various procedures. We were on the phone for like an hour and a half one day.
You
And
couldn't make a cheat sheet for everybody?
Yeah.
I started writing everything down, and now my letters are so descriptive, and I've got the words, and I know what they're looking for. And so, I actually do those things.
Yeah,
What does
feel
that
free to
sound
share
like for
those,
you?
Mr. Dennis in the know.
I was going to say, that sounds like a great post. Just saying, drip
I
out a few terms for us. Just tease
certainly
us.
will. But it's words. Jeff mentioned 2 of them. Another word, cuspal coverage indicated, tooth sleuth utilized, cracked tooth syndrome. There were so many things. And for buildup necessitated due to
Resistance
frail
and retention
or
form.
non-existing tooth structure. There's so many things that we can use, but I always start nice, and you rarely get beyond that one. But my favorite is the last one, where they say basically it's done after this one. I want whoever reviews this case to call me, and I will continue fighting it until I get a call. And then once you have that conversation, it usually goes a little bit further. But the context of today, I mean, what kind of moron wouldn't look at those pictures and say, yeah, these are 2 crowns? I mean, who wouldn't agree? Those 2 pictures were so descriptive today. They told you everything that you need to know.
But not that they wouldn't be there in a couple of years. There was nothing
Right.
about either of those teeth that said that they wouldn't succeed with a crown.
No.
Yeah.
Also, I applaud your efforts, but what an inordinate waste of time.
I was bored. I was
No. That's not a reflection of you. That we have to go to those links for our patients to be able to get the benefits that they're paying for. Like that's we have to go to those links. Oh, hey.
Sorry.
Echo. But you know what? And then, you get the Kessler statistic of only 6% of dental insured patients use their maximum benefit. Anyway, so you're like, okay, well, only 6% are using $1,500. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we have to fight to get them $250 reimbursement on a crown. This is exhausting. Sorry,
it is
soapbox, but I thought it'd be fun. I'm Chad. Thanks so much for sharing your topics and tidbits, but not in a concise list in which any of us could actually use. And
well, that was like a little twist the knife kind of thing there. Yeah, how'd that feel?
Yeah. This feels good right here when I write right there.
Hey, you know what I think we should do, Chad? I think
we should get that checked.
We should let JB have to do the rest of the show alone.
Yeah, sounds good.
You guys are such. All right. Well, since I'm all by myself and I'm a one-trick pony, I'm going to have to do the news. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive right into it, because I have some super interesting things to talk about tonight. Let's get done with the boring one first. Not that it's not important, but it didn't get my blood pumping quite as much as the other 2. The first one is that we have seen some new legislation pop up in support of eliminating fees for EFTs. These are specific for insurance reimbursements. So if you are a dentist that currently receives your reimbursements through an EFT or an electronic funds transfer, as opposed to a physical check, and you may be being charged fees to have the convenience of receiving those EFTs, there is now legislation out hoping to eliminate that additional cost to dentists in processing those EFTs. On a personal note, I can tell you it seems much easier and less costly than receiving checks and having to pay postage. Also, you have a lot of more human error when you're having to manually enter in those data points, as opposed to operating on the digital platform and being able to transfer it into accounts a little bit more seamlessly that way. You also do tend to get reimbursed just a little bit quicker because of that EFT processing faster than what the mail will deliver. But it does seem a bit unfair to take especially if you're in network, to already be taking the write-off adjustments, the decrease in fee reimbursement, but then also being charged probably a merchant services fee on the part of the patient who chose to use a credit card to pay you for their balance, and then an additional fee from the insurance company for their EFT. So is that 25%, 28%, 32%, or even higher in some states? It does start to marginally make a difference. So it's nice to see some movement in the legislation with that. The other interesting story for tonight, the FBI actually sent out a pretty massive cybersecurity warning that came out earlier this week. It actually impacted multiple industries. So there was a huge FBI warning that came out earlier this week, but it's been, no pun intended, drilled down in our industry to oral and maxillofacial surgeons. For some reason, there's a heightened risk that they are on the target list for a cybersecurity attack, or that there's been a threat made. So the ADA has posted a big warning for those individuals who own oral and maxillofacial surgical centers, to ensure that you are up to date on all of your malware, that your firewalls are in place, your IT team is prepared and vigilantly watching what's going on. But it's also just a quick reminder that while oral maxillofacial surgeons are being specifically targeted in this most recent cyber threat, that all dental practices are equally as vulnerable. And if we haven't seen that pretty handedly with the Change Healthcare cyber attack that occurred, almost 8 weeks ago, that has still shut down a good portion of the reimbursement piece for doctors to be able to submit claims and be paid on those claims. So we're already seeing the big issues that are going on with that. The next thing that's going to come out from the Change Healthcare is going to be there's already been a huge threat for the HIPAA violation of individuals that were processed through that exchange. So lots of activity in that world, doesn't seem to be slowing down, but it was super interesting that the oral maxillofacial surgeons were specifically identified in this latest threat. Okay, my friends, this one's really important for you to pay attention to. Effective July 1, the Department of Labor has now changed the standards for overtime pay eligibility. And this may impact dentists, depending on how you're currently paying your employees. If you're paying anyone that's making less than $35,568 or $684 a week, currently, that is the threshold to be eligible for overtime pay. That minimum is going up. As of July 1, the minimum payment or minimum salary range will be $43,888 or $844 per week. Meaning, if that individual as a salaried employee is exceeding 40 hours a week, you will be responsible for paying the difference in overtime fees to that particular employee. Even more impactful, January 1 of 2025, that number will go up to $58,656 or $1,128 per week. So if you have an office manager, an administrative team member, maybe your dental assistants are being paid salary. I don't think this will directly impact dentists or dental hygienists, but certainly other support team personnel that are in dental offices. If they make less than $58,656 as a salaried employee, they will be eligible to file for overtime if it exceeds that 40-hour allotment per week. It's really critical that you make note of those changes and that you're watching the hourly allotments for those particular employees, as you don't want to be in violation of these new changes. Certainly speak to your accountant or whoever is managing your payroll for more details, but this does go into effect in July 1 specifically. And then as of January 1 of 2025, this will be reviewed and re-upped every 3 years. And with that, that's the news. You're just going to make me do the whole thing by myself. You guys are a-holes.
Sorry. We were.
I knew he was going to do that.
I know.
We were asleep.
Were you checking your payroll numbers?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing, logging into my...
I was like, oh, you're getting 39 hours and 59 minutes. That's all you get.
Boy, they just come right at you. One
Everything
thing after
between
another.
this shelf and this shelf, excluding
anything above the Led Zeppelin stickers and below the pencils. Anything to the right of the erasers.
It's a profit thing.
Yeah, it's a profit
win
thing.
some
Yeah.
crap. Who out there can name that movie? We all had a good line from it. Oh, you're not supposed to give it away.
One of the best movies in the world.
I couldn't agree.
No, seriously, great news. And here's what I think, and this is just me kind of reading into it. You know, orthodontists have their own software that they use. and a lot of other specialists do too. I can imagine that maybe the software that was targeted was software that is mainly used by oral surgery offices.
Yeah, I would
That's
think
the
so.
only thing that I can think.
Yeah.
Or, a lot of surgeons, and I'm going to say a lot, I'm not saying all, I want to make that very clear, have sold out to corporate offices. And I'm wondering if one of those PE softwares was attacked, but that's the only reason that I could think that it would be. Yeah, I found it very odd that it was targeted at oral surgeons, but it's scary nonetheless. It's really scary nonetheless.
Nobody likes to be named.
I mean, hell, we were targeted a few months ago, and I think that was kind of thrown under the radar with the healthcare exchange platform. So
for sure.
Anywho,
well, guys, we have a great guest who's been waiting very patiently down there. And I'm really excited to hear from him because we talk so much about the oral systemic connection. We do oral cancer screenings, but this guest that Dr. Chad Duplantis found in Atlanta, I'm just so excited to have him because we're seeing a further merging of another medical discipline with what we do in dentistry, and that is dermatology. So do you want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm going to introduce him and you go ahead and bring him up, and I'll let him share a little bit about how we met each other. But as Jeff mentioned, I am incredibly excited to have Dr. Alexander Witkowski on. We met in a very odd fashion in Atlanta at the Hinman. But to start, let me just tell you a little bit about his career as to what he's doing right now. He is the chair of the American Academy of Dermatology Cutaneous Imaging Expert Resource Group. I'm sorry. He is an assistant professor at the Oregon Health and Science University Department of Dermatology. He's the co-director of that institute's Skin Imaging and Technology Center. He is the CEO and founder of Sklip, which we're going to get to in just a few minutes, digital dermoscopes, software platform, and AI triage of skin cancers. And he's also the CEO of MedVice Health, LLC, Medical Consulting. He is American-born, raised in California, in Redlands, California. He went to medical school, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it because I would get it wrong, in Poland. He did a dermatology residency in Italy, and this is incredibly cool. He is the Guinness World Record holder of the smallest skin cancer detected to date. It was a melanoma in situ of 0.65 millimeters in diameter, validated on May 1st, 2023. Now, I hold no Guinness records, but I just found that to be pretty cool because I, as a kid, could spend hours upon hours looking through Guinness Book of World records as to what I could possibly hold, and I think you found one that was pretty obscure. So I'm pretty impressed. But Alexander, it's so awesome to have you here. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Chad, Jeffro, and Jennifer. Greatly appreciate it. And of course, thanks for the introduction. I can just stop talking now. I appreciate it. But yeah. I really thanks for the opportunity to join you guys today and talk about how we can collaborate together between dermatology and dentistry. But I do want to comment. I have a quick comment because I enjoyed listening to the banter and the news and commenting on what you mentioned about the infiltration of the software or the cyber security attack within maxillofacial surgery. I don't know if you guys have seen the article that came out in the news about a week ago that AI, which of course maybe we'll talk a little bit about today in medicine, but AI is capable with a very high accuracy to determine your political affiliation based on your facial features. So I'm just guessing that could be one of the reasons. Maybe they didn't have enough data. They wanted to improve their accuracy with the patients through this way. I don't know. I mean,
you never know.
Quite possible.
That's pretty interesting. So is there a platform that we can go to and just kind of look at it and be like?
They didn't disclose it. They just said that there is AI that is capable to determine with the accuracy of over 90% whether you're Republican or Democrat, which is kind of scary to think that just based off of your photo, they can guess to that degree.
Yeah, because you would
That's-
think there'd be nothing about your facial features that would give any indication to your. Huh.
I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna close my eyes from here on out when I'm in public.
Yeah,
there you go.
exactly.
There you go.
Could be analyzing you at any moment for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Alexander, before we get into your background and whatnot, I know you mentioned this pre-show, but do you want to mention how we kind of came across each other in Atlanta?
Absolutely. I would love to. I just want to make one quick disclosure because I have three
please.
hats that I circle all the time: an academic hat, a personal hat, and then my business hat. And so just out of respect for my institution in Oregon, OHSU, I'm an assistant professor of dermatology there. And the content, of course, today that we're going to talk about, they all reflect my personal views and opinions. They don't, I'm not speaking on behalf of the institution. I have to say that, so I've said it. And anyway, so now to the good part. So the story, how I met Chad, is really interesting. So, I have a deep passion for early detection of skin cancer. And the fundamental way of doing that is with the dermatoscope, starting with your eyes and then applying the tool we'll talk about today. And I was at a conference in Atlanta at Hinman, and I had people come up to our booth where we had displayed our devices multiple times and say, "Did you hear about this presentation of Dr. Chad Duplantis?" Nobody could pronounce your name correctly, your last name, by the way.
I'm sure they couldn't pronounce yours either, dude.
Yeah, exactly. But that he found, and his office team, they had found this skin cancer, another, which was a basal and a melanoma. And I was excited to find out who is this Chad. But the way they described your last name, I had to literally go to the management and ask kindly to find out who is Chad Duplantis, where can I find him? So once they told me he's in room, I don't remember the room number, his session just ended 2 minutes ago, I just jetted out of there, ran upstairs, and long and behold, I met Chad. I mean, that's the quick story short, but I think we hit it off pretty quick because we have a passion for the similar kind of goals for our patients.
Yeah, it was a really amazing way that we connected, and it's funny that having this business outside of my clinical practice and then my speaking practice with these two wonderful people, I was like, okay, I've got to make this introduction because we're all very passionate about the oral systemic connection. So, Jeff, you look like you were chomping at the bit for a question, man. I can tell.
I'm curious, and I think this is the question that everyone out there is going to ask, which is, why is a prestigious dermatologist at a dental meeting? I mean,
running around looking for Chad.
Yeah.
Oh, they heard Chad was going to be there.
It's really funny because I got to mention this, and that was probably. We present, I hate to use the word lecture, but we present, we share, and we try and increase the knowledge and the capabilities of the dentists around us. And I think in all of those presentations, the minimum number of slides that I had was probably 300. And my melanoma and basal cell slide account for like 5 of those. And out of all those slides, it was really cool that the people found Alexander's group and were like, hey, this guy was presenting on this, because that's not what I was presenting on. I was presenting on the initial examination and utilizing digital technology. And so that was really flattering to me. But we all
How likely is it that those are the only slides that they weren't asleep for?
That's
very rare.
Very
rare.
possible. As a matter of fact, in my reviews, it said 97.63% of the presentation sucked, but there were 5 slides that were beneficial to my permanent knowledge in dentistry. Yeah. So, but
it's actually really good though when you lecture, because it's good for Jeff's business, because he just puts them all for sleep appliance.
We find all the apneics that way.
Yeah, we find the apneics very quickly.
Yeah. So anyhow, we're all technology nerds. And so, I don't know if you want to get into it now, but I say, let's go. I want to hear.
Hey, really quick for the newbie in the room. Alexander, tell us a little bit about your educational journey and maybe what got you to this very moment in time to be on this prestigious podcast.
Like this moment.
And don't forget, you still have to tell us why you were at a dental meeting.
Yeah, and include that as well. That's part
You're
of the
too
dream.
good for this, Alexander.
I'll go backwards because Jeffro won't be able to hang tight. So I'll go backwards. So why we were there, why I was there, is because unlike a primary care visit or dermatologist, which could be once a year or every 2 years, the American public sees their dentist and goes into a dental office. They are recommended to do so twice a year. So the likelihood of seeing something in general and then seeing something change over time is going to be first in a dental office. And so this is kind of why we were there, because a good portion of non-melanoma skin cancers, also melanoma, they occur on the neck and above. And so that's in the dentist realm, because then the dental hygienist or the dental provider, but basically the patient sitting in the chair, you see it and then you say something, but then what do you do with it? And so that is the why. We'll come back to it, but that kind of answers the why. My background, so I was born in the US. My parents are immigrants from Poland. My mother's a physician. She went to Europe to study medicine. In the interim, when I was a child, I visited Europe so much that I applied for medical school while I was still in high school in the US. So I graduated with an associate's degree during high school, and then I went straight to medical school in Europe, in Poland. And I know that Chad had a difficulty trying to pronounce it, so it's Jagiellonian University Medical College. It's a unique place because it's the third oldest medical school on the planet. Nicholas Copernicus went there, Pope John Paul II, a couple other famous persons went to the university. And in the second year of medical school, when I was only 18 years old, my friend had a mole on his umbilicus that he was worried about. But he was the typical patient that said, "Oh, something's there, but I don't want to go in." So I literally dragged him.
Let me show you my umbilicus.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, it's a guy friend, but nonetheless, I dragged him by the hand, and we went to dermatology, knocked on the door, and said, "We're medical students. Could you take a look at this?" Just because it didn't look so good, to be honest. And long and behold, the dermatology resident took out a tool, touched the skin with the tool, and then said, "Ooh," like "ooh ah." And I said, "Well, what are you seeing?" Like, "I want to see what you're seeing." And so they let me see it. And I saw these colors, structures, architecture. It looked like a painting to me, which for me was beautiful. Unfortunately, it was a melanoma. And this was the moment where I got interested in dermatology. So, and in the actual technology we're talking about, which is called the dermatoscope. So long story short, at the time in 2007, there were limited literature textbooks. So once I consumed those textbooks and literature, I went to Graz, Austria for a summer, and then I was invited to go to Italy to do my PhD during the duration of my medical school training. And I met the world famous, who was just most recently the president of the World Congress of Dermatology, my mentor and the best man at my wedding, Professor Giovanni Pellicani. And so he trained me in a cool technology called confocal microscopy, which is the tool that I use to diagnose the world's smallest skin cancer. And it was my patient, but my team and all of us together, we earned the Guinness World Record for that particular achievement. And then we also have received recognition from the White House as well. And so my story revolves around Europe, to keep it very short. And that's where the tool became prevalent in its clinical use. And so my goal and passion was to always come back home, right? And so I spent about 14 years in Europe, and I was invited to come back and see patients and develop the Skin Imaging Center in Oregon by Dr. Sancy Leachman, who's a leader in melanoma in academics in the United States. And the institution was very gracious, and I went through a thorough and lengthy process of what they call a management plan and conflict of interest. And so I was allowed and permitted to engage in the business activities of Sklip. So I could talk a lot longer, but I want to be respectful of everybody. So that's the long story short. But my passion started really about half my life ago. So I've been doing dermatology and interest in skin cancer and dermoscopy for about 19 years now.
I just changed my name to what I think your name really should be.
Oh, stop it. No, I've seen that in the past.
If you were in med school at 18, holy crap, man.
17 to be exact, but 18. Yeah, 18 in the second year.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Pretty cool.
My personal hat is laughing. My academic hat is just neutral.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
So
Jeff's
tell
got
us more about the technology that you have, the Sklip product, and how it came to be, and where you saw these additional needs in the dermatological world.
So it started in private practice. So when I finished residency in Europe, and even uniquely in Europe during residency training, so dermatology in the US is 3 years. In Europe, it's 5 years. So they do dermatology and venerology. So also an STD expert because it's part of the training there. But nonetheless, legally after the 3rd year, you can work in a private office, unsupervised, at your own risk, of course. And so I started my own private practice in my 4th year of residency training after, of course, working in the hospital so late at night. And I had patients coming in to see me for the uniqueness of the using the dermatoscope, but patients were coming in with attachments for their phones. And at the time, just the plastic attachment, the medical device portion, which is a magnifying device that you touch the skin and you see through the skin, you see more structure, more color, so more information to make a better decision. They were costing the patients $800 or euros at the time. And every year I saw, or every 6 months when some new phone comes out or iPhone, that medical device became obsolete. And so that's where the idea came to make that product the same or better quality, but make it for $150 or $200, something that you could transfer to the next generation of phones. So that's the hardware point, and it's called Sklip. Originally, we had a clip-on device. Now, if it's okay to show, we have it actually comes with the phone. So it's the medical device is this unit. It's got a dermatoscope with a light. And so you turn that on, and we actually sell it with the phone now to make it very easy. And then you apply a drop of oil, take a high definition medical grade photo, and then it's up to you what you do with it. So if you're a patient, like, it's no strings attached. If you have my chart, which is typically used like Epic EMRs, patients buy the devices, or they lend or rent them from our company or from the institution, and they send this medical grade photo directly to their dermatologist. That's if they have an existing relationship, right? And that's kind of the first problem we solve in the US is access to care. It's so limited that it takes like 9 months to a year to see a dermatologist from today that you're already worried about something, or your partner, husband, wife, or partner is worried about. And what if it's a melanoma? Well, if you cut it tomorrow, you're going to be okay. You have a 99% chance of survival with early detection. But if you cut it in a year from now, because you can't get in because of the access issues, you need to get first pre-screened by a primary care physician or provider. And it took me 2 years to get my own primary care physician at a prestigious institution. We don't even accept new patients in primary care at the largest academic institution in Oregon. I mean, that's the problem with access in Oregon. It's spread all the way down, or trickled down all the way to primary care. And so that's the problem we are attempting to solve from a commercial point of view, but just from a holistic point of view, is help empower the patients, the public, and then the healthcare providers, who are all part of this kind of spider web or network, to take a high quality photo today, get an answer today or tomorrow, and then get seen within 10 days. And that's kind of the problem that we're solving, is access to care, and then getting it to be a very high quality, precise, secondary kind of opinion. And so if it's a real board certified dermatologist who anonymously evaluates the images in our platform, well, then it's to the highest degree of a human capability. But we also developed AI that we receive FDA breakthrough designation status, also some other additional verifications, and we're in the process of submitting a 510K for clearance. Our AI is as accurate as the average dermatologist, or better in some cases, due to the lack of fatigue, if you look at it over a time period of 8 hours. And we're able to identify the skin cancers with a very high accuracy while maintaining a very safe, or let's say appropriate specificity, in 5 seconds. And that's pretty unique, because to date, the fastest image-based algorithm or tool that considers the entirety of a skin lesion or a mole was taking about 5 days. and now we're able to do it in 5 seconds. And that's unique, right? Because for a dermatology office, you want to make really quick decisions, but it's also opening the door to this, what we guys talked about earlier, is interspecialty collaboration. I think that's critical for skin cancer because it's a problem today. And if we can address it today or tomorrow by collaborating with primary care, with the dental offices, like in your case, we can work together to catch the inevitable early. And those 4 words are really critical, right? Catch the inevitable early, because it's going to happen. It's a question of when will we find it and who will find it, right? And I really believe personally, and not from a commercial point of view, just personally as a scientist and as somebody who's trying to solve a problem, is that dental offices and dental providers have a really critical role for skin cancer in the US, from the neck up or dorsal hands. If you're in Florida, it could be the front of your shins as well, right? People are in shorts all the time. But think about the patient sitting in the chair. Absolutely do not recommend to do a full body skin exam and asking to take off their shirt. That's not appropriate. I don't think that would be going beyond.
See your umbilicus.
Yeah. That's not going to go over well.
Yeah. It won't go over well.
That just got his license back from the last time he did that.
Oh, you just got it back. Okay. But something that's already right, literally in front of your face. Like let me ask you guys, what would you do right now if you saw something that's ugly on the patient's cheek? Like, what would you say to the patient, and to whom would you send them to?
Yeah, you end up sending them back to their dermatologist.
Exactly.
We get in 12 months from the time. And, we're also doing that interesting dance because we're not doing a body screen. Like if I went to a dermatologist, I would expect them to make commentaries about any pigmentation, any whatever. But we have to kind of dance a little fine line of not being like, how long have you had this discoloration here? Like you don't want to offend, because it's not, from a patient's perspective, it doesn't totally fall within our scope. So you don't want to make it sound overly curious. Like it needs to come from a diagnostic perspective, but I am sensitive to the fact that if I say something, are they going to be upset or ashamed or embarrassed because there's this particular lesion or thing that I've identified? Because from a patient's lay perspective, that's not our scope. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I'm curious what Chad and Jeffro, because I wanted to bring up what I really think is important, is the extraoral skin checks. Kind of what I noticed, engaging at Hinman and at Yankee Dental, a lot of providers came in DDS, DMD. I want to be, appropriate in the way I reference, right? But dental providers, came and talked to us and said that this is becoming more popularized, whether it's at the dental schools like Harvard Dental School. They talk to me and I talk with them, or the ADA has, had some kind of discussions about extraoral skin checks. So of course, you have to be careful about scope of practice, full agreement. But I'm thinking more of something like, it's evidently, you don't want to like say, oh, look at all those different spots. More of like, oh, that thing doesn't look good already. Or husband or wife brought it up in conversation. Like it's more of the thought process is the patient's already worried about it, and then you're acting like I don't know if the word conduit's right, but acting as a kind of person, a gateway to help them get to the next step, versus trying to look for problems, because that could be, it's a gray zone of scope of practice, right?
For sure.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, I've kind of already crossed over that line because of what I do. A lot of in my practice actually falls within the scope of medicine as well: sleep apnea, temporomandibular joint issues. So a lot of the things that I have to refer out for neurology, for ENT, so many of those things, I've just gotten so comfortable at this point, of the standpoint of, I am not just your dentist, I'm also a healthcare advocate. I'm not necessarily a physician because of what I do, or a medical doctor, but I am still a healthcare advocate, and anything that looks out of the ordinary, whether it is within my scope or not, I will have the conversation with my patient. Look, this is me taking my dentist hat off because this is not where my specialty training is. But what I will tell you is that I have worked with enough physicians in these other areas to say that they appreciate it when we find something that just doesn't look right, to at least bring it up and say, hey, let's make sure we get this investigated, a little bit more thoroughly. And so I don't know, I guess it's just something that I've been doing for so long in practice that I just don't have any fear of bringing those things up. And
what you're describing is just good practice. That's how I see somebody's teeth falling out because when I do a skin exam, I do an intraoral exam, right? So I put a glove on, especially if the patient has had a melanoma history. Open the mouth with the glove, of course, take a look, swipe through, open and look and see. And I've had multiple instances in Europe and here in Oregon, where I practiced already for 4 years, where something doesn't look right inside the mouth, and we refer the patient straight to the dental school. We're lucky that we have the dental school here. So then the biopsy is done by the oral surgeon or by the dental surgeon. And that's just good practice, right? Not just kind of, I don't like the physicians who keep their eyes like a horse in the main square in Europe that has those black blinders and just follows rigorously. You have to follow the rules, number one, but you have to think outside the box and always be able to help facilitate that kind of, like you said, good healthcare advocacy. And it goes both ways, right? So dermatologists should always check inside the mouth, even just for a quick moment to see if anything's going on. And that's a rarity, to be honest. It's mostly amongst the melanoma experts who are doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, to both Jennifer and Jeff's point, I see both sides for sure. But I think that the one that rips the Band-Aid off is the first one that you find, and it's just that, when I found that, or when we found in our practice the melanoma years ago, that really, it really was a game changer in our practice to open up that conversation to anything that's out of the norm, extra orally in our region. Now, if I were to ask to see their umbilicus, they might think I'm a little bit weird. But
really
the thing is that anything that we can see from, collar of the shirt up, I think is fair game to point out. And fortunately, we really have a great team in our practice. And I know the three of us each do, is that, I'll go into an exam and, it's funny, sometimes the hygienist is like, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, hygienist is like, hey, I hate to point this out, but in my mirror, I noticed that her right nostril is really red and inflamed. And, she's like, I kind of mentioned it to her and she was cool with it and she wants you to take a look. And so, we walk in there and I'm like, your right nostril is pretty red and inflamed. I'm not really sure what's going on in there because that is not my scope, but I do think that you should be evaluated by an ENT. And those conversations become easier the more that you have them. And patients do appreciate it, more than we think. And especially if you can share at least one story about some things that you found in the practice that you're just looking out for their best interest, and they always like when you're not trying to sell them anything too.
Sure.
You're just looking out for their best interest. So
what you described is doing like a value add for your patients.
Absolutely.
Your You're building trust, you're building rapport. And then most importantly, once you find that melanoma or skin cancer in this particular conversation, then that success story, it creates something that's invaluable and hard to put a price on, which is that patient retention and word of mouth in your local community. Because once, you probably could speak to your own experience, Chad, but once you find it in that unique setting, people talk and they say, well, hey, Chad doesn't just, check my teeth. He's thinking about me holistically. He's thinking about, he's got my back, kind of a thought process. And melanoma is a serious thing. I mean, basal cell and squamous, They're non-melanoma. They're, cosmetically disfiguring depending on the size, but melanoma can kill you. And it's absolutely very disfiguring on the face, depending on where it's located, if it's near the eye or near the lip. And these are things that are, not just the health, like the physical health in the sense that you're going to die from this disease, but also that kind of cosmetic effect has a psychological impact on these patients forever, because, your face is, I always say the soul on the eyes is the definition of who you are, but looking at the surface of the skin, your face is it's who you are, right? And so you can make an impact by helping them, find something earlier, which is going to get found eventually anyways, hopefully, but it get found, right?
Alexander, do you think that this same technology will find its way to the intraoral screen as well, or is it fairly limited to just?
Thank you, Jennifer. That question, I really have to be honest, I've heard it 100 plus times, maybe even 200.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes. And ever since we, received the questions about that, we're looking into what kind of solutions could be made. From what I looked at intraorally, what's available now, everything is clinical image oriented, right? So then the fixed position, and then just a snapshot of the intraoral in the mouth or the cavity. And like dermatology, that has serious limitations, because if you don't contact the skin, you can't see through it to any degree whatsoever unless you touch it. So you can't see certain structures, you can't see colors. And in the case of skin cancers in the mouth, the color white or blue, there's something called chrysalis. These are regression structures. You can't see that with your naked eye. If you can, it's a bit late, right?
Yeah.
And so, a solution does not exist. It would be, I've heard enough interest to think that maybe it's a good idea to think about it. Uniquely, my grandfather passed away from squamous cell of the mouth. So that's very, dear to me. But I'm interested to see how many times have been asked that question in the last 3 months. So can I ask your guys' experience? You asked the question, is there something to take better images in the mouth? Do you feel like whatever's out there is like not enough, or is missing? What kind of gap is missing? Because I'm just curious kind of where the question comes so often.
I think for years we have multiple tools available to us, whether it's through a brush biopsy or through a visualization device, to detect dysplastic tissue. But anything that's detected as dysplastic should be examined further through biopsy. Whereas yours differs a little bit. Yours is much more descript, and so there's a huge disconnect in something that turns quote unquote black in an image or dark in an image, that needs to be looked into further, versus, like you said, mentioning all the pigmentation and all the colors. And really, you're able to look at something under almost a microscope, and give an indication as to, I'll let you talk about that in a minute. I actually want to talk about this, what we did with me at your booth. Look at it further. Is it red? Is it green? Is it yellow? Which way do you go with this? And I think there's a huge disconnect there, because there's only one way to go. There's either green or there's yellow in dentistry. Intraorally, there needs to be a green, a yellow, and a red. How do we proceed, and how do we express the urgency to patients? Do you all agree? Or
I think so. And we do get a fair number of misdiagnoses if it's a large swath, lesion. Because one, our surgeries are more invasive just because they're mucosal membrane. So there's more bleeding, it's more involved. And oftentimes it's not biopsies that general surgeons would be comfortable. Like if you're cutting the tongue, floor, the mouth, those are highly vascularized areas. It's a much more complicated and potentially dangerous surgery. So, you want to be cautious in your recommendation, and you don't want to just cut for cutting's sake. And so we don't have a tool yet that really helps us scope in, to Chad's point, that green, yellow, red, to say, it's important enough to give that to the patient, to push them forward for that referral, to do that more invasive surgery for that biopsy. Because while it's great that it comes back negative, the patient's also looking at you, go, well, that cost me X amount of money, because again, in the dental world, they don't get coverage for these things. So these are considerations that dentists are constantly stewing over, saying, okay, well, I know if I send you there, it's probably $2,500 to do this procedure. It's likely not going to be covered under any insurance plan. If you do, you might get $1,000 back. It's also going to be painful. It's highly invasive. And if it comes back negative, which is great, everybody's super happy. We've now put you through this kind of arduous exercise to determine that we can see something abnormal, but we don't know how to discern from that.
And can I ask what the elephant in the room? Are we talking about looking for squamous cell? Like, what is the most common thing that you guys are biopsying in the mouth? What's most common?
Anything.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to catch it at the dysplastic level.
Yeah,
we're trying to catch it before it changes to something that would be considered more invasive.
Well, what the problem is that none of the tools that we have to this point have been shown in the research to have caused greater diagnosis of potentially really bad lesions, right? We don't have any data that says all of these tools that we're implementing are catching cancers earlier, there's
no direct correlation to the impact of or outcome. I would even say outcomes, right? If you're not, and then I guess the specificity must be low if there's no outcome. I mean, it's my guess because it's not my expertise, but just thinking from a scientific point of view, this same conversation came up in melanoma. I mean, this is an important topic. It was the hottest topic of last year at the American Academy of Dermatology. The annual conference, they put on a debate series, and the chairwoman of our department, she was for early detection, and then another individual, a physician dermatologist, was, not to say they're against early detection, but their thought process is that we overdiagnose and we don't make an impact on the patient outcomes. And this is a hot topic, very dear to my heart, because I always put myself in the position of a melanoma patient. If I told them, yeah, we're not going to try to find it too early, we're going to wait till it's a problem so that way we'll deal with it when it's a true problem. Like, that's the way I answer those conversations. But it is a topic that comes up in our own circles, right? I wanted to make a comment about like my experience at the dental conferences, because I went there with the reason was to understand kind of what the opinion is, right? And I got the feeling that the dental group is very passionate about doing more. And this is kind of the reason I was even recommended to go and talk and engage by my business partner and some of our investors or board advisory members. One of them happens to be a DMD here in Oregon, Dennis Simonson. And I got the feeling that your group is very comfortable with new tools, right? Because the medical industry, or the dermatology, I want to be clear, has always been kind of like very weary to try new things. They're very set in stone in the way things are done in the US, while in Europe, things were advancing much quicker within dermatology. But I found the opposite in a good way within dental, because everybody was excited, like they want to touch the tool, try it. And Chad, we tried it on you as an example, and then you get to kind of see, you experienced it yourself, right? And you mentioned the green, orange, red. I just want to be clear for the audience what that means. So that's an anonymous evaluation of the medical image, whether or not it possesses concerning dermoscopic criteria. And for over 20 years, because it was in 2004, something called the 3-point checklist criteria. If the skin lesion has one of those features, it could be a skin cancer. 2 or more, it's likely. 3 or more, or 3 of 3, very likely. But if it has none of them, the chances of it being a skin cancer are well below 1%. And so using that very basic, easy to understand model, if you send the image through a platform, whether it's ours or directly to the dermatologist, if you have one, that's kind of what the whole idea of green means. It doesn't have criteria. It doesn't mean it will never be a problem. It's medicine, things change. But today it's not. And so you just self-monitor. Red, the opposite spectrum, that's bad. Likely it's melanoma, squamous, or basal, or some other entity that needs to be biopsied tomorrow. And then orange, something that needs to be monitored closely. So we found, in literature and experience, if we monitor lesions over time, if once they start changing, the first time you can find it is with this tool called the dermatoscope, right? So anyways, I just wanted to comment on kind of my experience of what the reception was. I did, we talked about scope of practice or interest level. My evaluation going to 2 conferences so far is that the dentists who engage in cosmetic practice, they were the most interested within the DDS, DMD level of professional level. They felt very comfortable already, making injections. So using a tool to take medical grade photos, I think it just comes naturally in those settings. But I also found that the dental hygienists were very excited about the product, right? But of course, with the caveat that if their supervising, provider is not aware of the product, then it's hard for them to utilize it in the dental office setting, right? So similar to like dental and dermatology offices, the collaboration between physician assistants and the dermatologist is really critical, that you're in sync in regards to kind of what tools should or could be used on the patient.
If I could I want to interject one point, because if I don't speak on behalf of this patient, I will have lost an opportunity. So one of the things that, if you asked why would a general dentist want this type of technology from both an extraoral, which we would absolutely want, but from an intraoral perspective as well. I had a patient who had kind of a generalized lesion, and it literally covered attached gingiva almost over the entire maxilla. It took 6 biopsies over the course of 6 or 8 years to get a positive squamous cell diagnosis. Up until that point, it kept coming back as some type of leukoplakia lesion that was non-carcinogenic. I think it was always carcinogenic. It was just the sample piece that happened to be selected each time that was being submitted for biopsy. Because by the time it was officially diagnosed, he lost half of his maxilla on one side, and he will lose the other half of his maxilla before all is said and done. And, to no fault of anybody, because it's all about the particular piece of cell specimen that you choose to biopsy at that particular time, a global diagnostic tool that would allow you to image entire lesions for all aspects of it, to give the clinician a lot more power for patients like that who go for long periods of time underdiagnosed because of the way because you cannot biopsy an entire lesion that takes up, inches of the maxilla to convince a patient to just go ahead and take all that tissue just for the fun of figuring out what it might be. It's not an easy conversation to have. And so what your technology could do for us as GPs is to be able to go in, do those global reviews for patients on these large lesions that potentially have some cellular variability somewhere. We just don't know where to biopsy to get the most accurate diagnosis. And I think that fundamentally changes. If your passion is to, help people not be maimed from cancer and not die from cancer, that's where you'll have the biggest win, I think.
Yeah, and this situation that you described, which is summarized by 2 words, navigational context, can only be solved with a dermatoscope. And we have the same problem in dermatology. So to give you perspective, you go in, your dermatologist sees a skin lesion, or they say mole, right, for layman terms, but for the layperson of concern, and they do a shave biopsy. So they get the whole thing out. This is just, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but take a guess, anybody here, what percentage of the actual mole is evaluated by a dermatopathologist for the diagnostic purpose? What do you think of the whole tissue specimen, the actual lesion, right? Because they take normal tissue, but the lesion itself, what percentage do you think gets seen by the pathologist?
5%.
Yeah, I
Yep.
was gonna say
5
10%.
to 8, 5 to 8%. So what if the melanoma, we're talking about now on the extraoral, on the skin.
Yeah.
If the melanoma is a new one that's arising within an existing nevus, how would you know where in the lesion you should make the sections, meaning the pathology technician who's not a doctor, not a dentist, not medically trained, right? They're just following a rigorous, of course, protocol, following the rules. How would you know where to cut? They don't. And uniquely, that's what we solved, what we did with our artificial intelligence. I don't know if the camera will show it, but I can show the lesion. So here's a skin lesion. It kind of shows it. It'll show it this way. Okay, here's a lesion. And then what we show, these kind of heat maps, and this, the first time we showed this was about 3 weeks ago with the FDA representatives who are represent themselves academically, but the persons who are responsible for clearance and approval of these type of tools invited me to present academically at a conference in Baltimore, and we showed the audience what we can do in the future. And so instead of randomly taking samples of 5% of the lesion, our AI heat maps are provided to the user, which is the dermatologist or the physician's assistant or nurse practitioner. And I have several patents that are out at the USPTO that are pending, but one of them is that you can use a drop of registered, FDA registered special ink and place it on the skin exactly in the area that matches the medical grade photo highlighted by our AI. And so instead of taking a 5% guess, you actually take a very specific and precise sample of the tissue. So you basically put the ink on before you do the shave biopsy, and the ink stays in fixed place when it arrives in the formalin bottle to the pathology lab. And that's a problem that we just solved recently. I mean, we've been working on it for years and doing different clinical trials in Europe and here in the US, but we've shown to improve precision of correct diagnosis significantly. And the best example is one of my patients that I was did some public awareness with, and we signed all the waivers to use her name and go on TV together. Her melanoma was not correctly diagnosed 3 times, meaning that the samples of the slides that were presented to the pathologist, they were benign. The pathologist was correct based on what they saw, which is analogous to the situation that you described, Jennifer, right? Is that whatever was being sampled was fine, but the actual problem was somewhere else within the lesion. And so we solved that problem for dermatology. Maybe we would, at least I would like somebody to solve that problem for dentistry.
For
right?
sure. For sure.
To have a squamous cell, it's a delay of the inevitable, right? And nobody's at fault. It's just the tools don't.
That's right.
Issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Doc, we are over our time. I
understand that.
But I think I could go another hour or so. But I will definitely say that this conversation needs to be continued, and we'd love to have you back if you'd be willing to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Are we going to address this question?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next. So I do know that Dr. Witkowski has been very kind and to extend a discount to dentists for this and to the members of our group, and we'll figure out how to do that and how to post.
We're going to put that out tomorrow.
And that will be incredible. I am incredibly excited about this. And, to be honest with you, this is something that won't only benefit you at the office, it'll benefit you at home as well. Be able to
we have nurses taking these home to barbecues and have found melanomas that are
exactly
in Southern Oregon. I mean, we've got plenty of those type of stories.
As we're closing, I'll tell this story. So as Jennifer Bell can attest to, we were in Cancun in February, and we were at the pool, all of us. And Jeff, you were there too, but I don't think you heard this conversation where Jennifer comes over to me and says, "Hey, Chad, you need to reapply." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even apply the first time." So anyways, after getting home and scaling for a couple of weeks, I noticed that this nevus on my face had darkened a little bit. And so, of course, selfishly running into Alexander at the Hinman, I'm like, hey, dude, we've got to do this. And as a disclaimer, he made it very clear that he's not licensed to practice in the state of Georgia. And one of the dentists was like, give it to me, I'll do it. You know, so anyhow, we sat there, and it was very, very rewarding because they put a little mineral oil on my face. And Jeff and Jennifer, you would love this. The two dentists that were in the booth with Alexander were both Kois trained dentists. And they put a little mineral oil on my face. They pressed the light up against my face. Of course, the first guy, he might have been from Georgia. He didn't get a good enough image. The second guy from Oregon nailed it the first time. And we got this image, and you look at it, and it's like, you know, Alexander says it's like a painting. To me, I was like, holy crap, that's what it looks like up close. And I'm like, it's cancer. It's cancer, you know.
I'm going to die. I'm going to die.
Immediately, I got the green light. And it's just such a relief to be able to get that. And so, you know, my point is that, you know, you get a lot of information from something like this, and we're all technology nerds. And as we close, I just want to say this is a fantastic product to use in the dental office because we are not just tooth mechanics, folks. We truly are and have the opportunity to be physicians of the oral cavity and beyond. And like Alexander said, they come to us twice a year. I can attest to the fact that it's virtually impossible to get into the dermatologist. And I'll go one step further. The thing that I always say in my presentations, and I know we can all relate to this too, is that dentists are really good, as are physicians and everybody else, at presenting problems, but not presenting solutions. This presents a problem, and they're building a network of providers through Sklip that understand the product, that know the product, that will be expecting these referrals. And so we present the problem and we give them the solution as to their next step, and can even go one step further and make an appointment for them or have the appointment made very readily in a dermatologist office. So kudos to you, Alexander, and your team for what you've built. It's an honor to call you a friend, and I look forward to the future with us and you and dermatology and dentistry and seeing where it can go. So
thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you all again on the show. And I also look forward to potentially lecturing with you, Chad, on the academic circuit. That'll be fun. Thank you so much.
Would your diagnosis have been an age spot?
Chad doesn't look a day over 25 years of age.
Not a day.
Yeah, but he did tell me how I could get it treated. He's gonna.
So did Jeff, actually.
If I can't get into Dr. Green in the next couple of weeks, I'm flying to Oregon. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You know, because if you show up, he's gonna see you. I mean, you just show up to Oregon, he's gonna be like, dude, he came from Texas. I got to see him today.
Yeah.
So
we got to work him in.
Yeah. So anyhow, Alexander, thank you so much. I invite you. I don't know. Are you on Facebook, Alexander?
I'm not on. I mean, I haven't used it in a long time.
No.
Link or LinkedIn.
The reason I ask is I invite you to join our Facebook group. That's probably where the most engagement is. But if engage with us on Facebook, we'd love for you to chime in.
You can also just get us on Instagram.
Yeah. But he can post cases in our private group on Facebook.
Yeah. So you're inspiring me to retune and refresh my Facebook. Now
there you go. There you go. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Any parting words? Anybody else?
No. Wait, real quick. What was the name of the dermatologist you trained with in Italy?
Oh, that's Professor Giovanni Pellicani. So he was.
Okay.
I got to say one last thing. I had a great time in Italy. I lived there for 4.5 years in Modena. That's where Ferrari, Lamborghini, one city. Ferrari, Lamborghini, the cheeses, the prosciuttos, and the balsamic vinegar, and dermoscopy all come from the same city.
Jeez.
So what
and the authentic brick oven. That's like home of the brick oven as well.
That is. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And 2 times Michelin star restaurant, best in the world, is in Modena, Italy.
Yeah. I studied under a Giovanni Canarazzo for laser resurfacing. That's I didn't know if you said Giovanni, and I thought there's no way that we trained with the same guy.
they're definitely both Italian based on the first
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
It's like saying I trained under a John in America.
Yeah,
and then
I
it's
get it, but
I was
far
Well,
apart.
yeah. I'm sure Giovanni may know that Giovanni. I have a
that
gut
they
feeling.
all, yes, for sure.
For sure. Thank you
well,
all
as we
very
close,
much.
I'll just tell y'all that I trained under Limoncello Pellegrino. So, hey. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.